Welcome to Tyrone Bowman Tonight. I'm your host, Tyrone Bowman. Before we get started on tonight, for those of you that will be passing by and viewing this YouTube channel, would you do something for me? Would you like and subscribe to the Tyrone Bowman Tonight YouTube channel? Tell your friends about it. Tell your family. Tell your enemies about it as well. So take a few moments and subscribe to this channel. And even if you don't subscribe, like the videos. There are about almost 58 videos on this YouTube channel covering a variety of subject and topics. And hopefully you'll find something that will be inspirational and motivational to you and for you. So once again, like and subscribe to the Tyrone Bowman Tonight YouTube channel. Also, do you believe that you have a specific call? I'm talking about a ministerial call on your life. And are you looking to further that call? Would you like to become a part of a growing prophetic school where you can get involved online and it can help you to mature and to grow? If so, the Higher Dimensions School of the Prophets is for you. And the Higher Dimensions School of Deliverance is for you. So if you'd like to become a part of the Higher Dimensions School of the Prophets and the Higher Dimensions School of Deliverance, simply go to their website at www.school.com. That's www.schoolfortheprophets.com. And when you go to the website www.schoolfortheprophets.com, just register your email address to get the particular link, and they will respond. And the email address is myhigherdimensions7@gmail.com. myhigherdimensions7@gmail.com. It is the Higher Dimensions School for the Prophets and Higher Dimensions School of Deliverance. Their introductory course has already started, and classes will start on the 29th of January of this month. And the School of Deliverance is this Tuesday at 7 p.m. online. So once again, go to www.schooloftheprophets.com and register your email by simply going to myhigherdimensions7@gmail.com. Now let's get started on the program on this evening. This evening we're going to be talking, or I'm going to be talking about the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and exactly who he was and what he meant. The King holiday is a very special holiday here in America. It was signed into federal law during the year 1981 under then President Ronald Reagan. President Ronald Reagan, with the efforts of Dr. King's widow, Coretta Scott King, along with the one and only Stevie Wonder, who's a humanitarian, singer, songwriter, and activist. They worked hard and they lobbied to get the King holiday to become a reality. That is what the Happy Birthday song is all about. So briefly, also, earlier today I was on my radio program and we did an extensive tribute to Dr. King, his life, legacy, and ministry. It was a wonderful time that we had on the radio today, and hopefully at some point in time as we continue to grow, that once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we'll be able to go live here on YouTube, and we'll be able to really do some exciting and wonderful things with this program. So don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. So who was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? According to Google, Martin Luther King Jr. was an American Baptist minister and activist who became the most visible spokesman and leader in the American Civil Rights Movement from 1955 until his unfortunate and untimely death in 1968. And Martin Luther King Jr. was born into a prominent family. His father, he was named after his father, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Sr., who was a pastor and minister as well. And he taught his son that at the early age the importance of being spiritual or religious, as they called it back then, and the importance of finding your purpose for life and not just idly going through life, just barely existing. He was born in Atlanta, Georgia, And Dr. King, because I want to get this right here. Boop, boop. There we are. Dr. King attended the Boston University from 1951 to 1955. He attended the Morehouse School of Theology from 1951 to 1955. Pardon me, my bad. You know what? Let me go down because they got it wrong here. So let me start from the bottom and work my way up. He attended Morehouse College from 1944 to 1948. After that, he attended Crozer Theological Seminary from 1948 to 1951. Then he attended School of Theology from 1951 to 1955, Boston University from 1951 to 1955. As a matter of fact, Boston University, they are the holders of all Dr. King's major speeches and so many other wonderful things that happened during the course of his life. And it's interesting to note, and we must understand why we do the things that we do. The King holiday is not just a holiday where we go out and buy stuff like any other holiday. It is a spiritual day. Why? Because it's bathed with prayer. It's bathed with spiritual reflection. It has great biblical overtones within it. And at the same time, it is honoring the memory and legacy of, without a doubt, who was the most powerful civil rights leader, quote unquote, and prophet of his time. Yes, Dr. King was a prophet indeed. He was a real, genuine, authentic, what we would call man of God in the realm of the church world. Also, Dr. King, along with the late Reverend Ralph Abernathy, for a total of 39 times, they were arrested. A total of 39 times. And what precipitated the civil rights movement? What propelled King to become the leader for the civil rights movement? Well, it all started when he accepted a pastorate of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church down in Montgomery, Alabama. He was 27 years of age at the time. He was a young pastor. This is his first pastorate, and he decided that he wanted to, get away from his parents. And also, ladies and gentlemen, you can always go to Google, you can always go to YouTube, and you can look up so many fascinating facts about Dr. Martin Luther King, and you will be surprised. Like one of the main things that you should look up the time where he talked about his experience with God that he had in his kitchen. And it came as a result of him having been under pressure, threatened, intimidated. They were trying to drive Dr. King out of town. And it was during that time and during that moment when the realization set in, and he knew that he needed much more than college degrees in order to get the job done. So Dr. King was selected to become a spokesperson. And how did that happen? Because he was new in town, and the powers, quote unquote, to be did not know him. And as a result of that, he agreed to appear at a church, and the rest is history. The civil rights movement was born out of a longing for respect, a longing for recognition, a longing for challenging and changing unjust and cruel laws that has existed on the books for so long. And this is why it's so vitally important to understand something here. I'm going to read an excerpt from Dr. King's letter entitled A Letter from Birmingham Jail. And it's important to do this because it gives you the mindset of Dr. King and what he was dealing with while he was in prison at that time. Here I am pulling up the letter. And then after I read an excerpt from this letter, I'm going to also read and talk about Coretta Scott King, because it's important to talk about her as well. Because he didn't do it alone, ladies and gentlemen. I know some people think that Dr. King accomplished everything by himself. No, it was a collaborative effort that took place. And let me also share this with you. There are too many people who are selfishly going through life, taking credit for everything. Dr. King was a humble man. Dr. King never sought the spotlight. He never craved attention unto himself. Out of the 10,000 speeches that Dr. King made, it was never about him. It was about the cause. There's a book entitled The Essential Writings of Martin Luther King Jr. I read the book. It's over 800 pages long. In that book, it recorded every major speech that Dr. King ever made. And the speeches are in its entirety, not just the excerpts that we hear in the news. From the Birmingham jail, where he was imprisoned as a participant in nonviolent demonstrations against segregation, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote in longhand the letter which follows. It was his response to a public statement of concern and caution issued by 8 white religious leaders of the South. Dr. King, who was born in 1929, did his undergraduate work at Morehouse College, attended the Integrated Crozer Theological Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania, one of 6 black pupils among 100 students, and the president of his class, and won a fellowship to Boston University for his PhD. While confined here and I'm quoting Dr. King now, while confined here in the Birmingham City Jail, I came across your recent statement calling our present activities unwise and untimely. Seldom, if ever, do I pause to answer criticism of my work and ideas. If I sought to answer all of the criticisms that crossed my desk, my secretaries would be engaged in little else in the course of the day, and I would have no time for constructive work. But since I feel that you are men of genuine goodwill and your criticisms are sincerely set forth, I would like to answer your statement in what I hope will be patient and reasonable terms. I think I should give the reason for my being in Birmingham, since you have been influenced by the argument of outsiders coming in. I have the honor of serving as president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, an organization operating in every southern state, with headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. We have some 85 affiliate organizations all across the South, one of them being the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights. Whenever necessary and possible, we share staff, educational, and financial resources with our affiliates. Several months ago, our local affiliate here in Birmingham invited us to be on call to engage in a nonviolent direct action program. If such were deemed necessary, we readily consented, and when the hour came, we lived up to our promises. So I am here along with several members of my staff because we were invited here. I am here because I have basic organizational ties here. Beyond this, I am in Birmingham because injustice is here. Just as the 8th century prophets left their little villages and carried their "Thus saith the Lord" far beyond the boundaries of their hometowns, and just as Apostle Paul left his little village of Tarsus and carried the gospel of Jesus Christ to practically every hamlet and city of the Greco-Roman world, I too am compelled to carry the gospel of freedom beyond my particular hometown. Like Paul, I must constantly respond to the Macedonian call for aid. Moreover, I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider. You deplore the demonstrations that are presently taking place in Birmingham, but I am sorry that your statement did not express a similar concern for the conditions that brought the demonstrations into being. I am sure that each of you would want to go beyond the superficial social analysis who looks merely at effects and does not grapple with underlying causes. I would not hesitate to say that it is unfortunate that so-called demonstrations are taking place in Birmingham at this time. But I would say, in more emphatic terms, that it is even more unfortunate that the white power structure of this city left the Negro community with no other alternative, close quote. You can read this letter in its entirety if you choose to. It's entitled Letter from a Birmingham Jail. It's a 6-page letter that was written by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That's just an excerpt of why he was down in Birmingham, Alabama. I want to talk about someone that I know who deserves a rightful place in history, and that's Coretta Scott King. And without the devotion, dedication of his wife, Dr. King would have never have been able to travel across the globe extensively. He would have never, as a father of 4 children, have been able to have the peace of mind and stability that he had to be able to do the things that was done. Coretta Scott King was an American author, activist, civil rights leader, and the wife of Martin Luther King Jr. As an advocate for African American equality, according to Google, she was a leader for the civil rights movement in the 1960s. I don't even know why I'm sniffing. King was also a singer who often incorporated music into her civil rights work. Also, she was an educator in her own right, which is awesome because she was definitely an educated woman. She came from a wonderful background. She was born in Alabama in 1927, 2 years prior to Dr. King being born. And they were married from 1953 up until 1968. And one of the most notable things that Coretta is known for, along with all the wonderful things that she did, she also, she joined her husband whenever she could in civil rights activism in the 50s and the 60s. And following Dr. King's assassination, she founded the, because I want to get the name right, the Martin Luther King Jr. Nonviolent Center for Social Change, headquartered in Georgia. The King home stayed every year. Thousands upon thousands of individuals come. President Biden recently went to lay a wreath at the tomb of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Make no mistake about it, when Dr. King appeared in Memphis, Tennessee on the 3rd of April 1968, he was at what was known as the world headquarters for the Church of God in Christ, Mason Temple. And on that stormy winter night, Dr. King was suffering from a very severe fever. He came in town to deal with the issue of the sanitation workers down in Memphis, Tennessee. And Dr. King sent Jesse Jackson and others before him to go speak in his place, but there were about 3,000 plus people, and the crowd would not be satisfied with not hearing from Dr. King. And Dr. King, though he was tired, worn, weary, suffering from fever, he just wanted to rest. He came to the church in what would be his last public appearance and his last public address. And you need to listen to that speech in its entirety for yourself. Don't let the news media just give you snippets and excerpts of that speech. That speech is over 30 minutes long. It's entitled, I've Been to the Mountaintop. And the only thing that the media wants to harp on and talk about where it says, I may not get there with you to the promised land, but we as a people will get to the promised land. Check it out. And the very next day, Dr. King was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. Ladies and gentlemen, we pay homage to this humble servant. We pay homage to this humble prophet. We honor the life, legacy, and memory of the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and to all the heroes and heroines of the civil rights movement. Read the book entitled, Where Do We Go From Here? Look at the videos that have been left for posterity purposes. Never surrender, never quit.